Cats don't care what you think about them. That's the entire premise. That's the whole thing. We've built an entire mythology around cats being aloof, being independent, being mysteriously superior. And the reason that mythology exists is because it's true. A cat will sit in your home, ignore you completely, and somehow make you feel like you're the one who's failed the relationship. A dog will worship you unconditionally. A cat will acknowledge your existence when it serves their interests. And we've decided this makes them high status. But here's what's fascinating. Cats aren't high status because they're actually superior. Cats are high status because they've internalized something that most creatures never figure out. They understand that demonstrating need is the fastest way to lose status. They understand that scarcity of attention is more valuable than abundance. They understand that the moment you start seeking approval, you've already lost the game. Think about how status actually works in human hierarchies. The highest status person in a room is rarely the one trying hardest to impress everyone. It's the person who could leave and nobody would blame them. It's the person who has options. It's the person who doesn't need to be there. The moment someone realizes you need them more than they need you, the power dynamic shifts. You become the pursuer. They become the prize. Cats have weaponized this. They've turned indifference into a status signal so powerful that we literally pay them to ignore us. We buy them food, set up their litter boxes, provide them with entertainment, and they respond by sitting on the other side of the room, completely uninterested in our efforts. And we interpret this not as rejection, but as proof of their superiority. We think this creature is so confident, so self-sufficient that it doesn't need my validation, and we respect that. Here's the thing. Cats might actually be that confident, or they might just be cats. But the psychology works the same way. Whether the indifference is genuine or performative doesn't matter. The effect is identical. People respond to unavailability by increasing their investment. Scarcity creates value. A cat that constantly sought your attention would be needy. A cat that ignores you is mysterious and desirable. This is high-status behavior, and it's not limited to cats. It's the behavior of people who understand that their value is determined by how much they're willing to withhold, not by how much they're willing to give. It's the behavior of people who understand that being needed is weakness and being wanted is power.
Let's talk about how cats structure their environment. A cat has territories. A cat has safe spaces. A cat has preferred surfaces and preferred times. And a cat enforces these boundaries ruthlessly. If you try to pet a cat when it doesn't want to be petted, it will hurt you. If you violate a cat's space, it will make you regret it. And here's the thing. We don't see this as aggression. We see it as the cat having standards. We respect it. We modify our behavior to accommodate the cat's preferences. This is the foundation of high-status behavior, boundary enforcement. High-status individuals don't ask permission to have preferences. They have them, they enforce them, and they expect everyone around them to accommodate. Low-status individuals constantly negotiate their boundaries. They apologize for having needs. They feel guilty for setting limits. High-status individuals, they set a boundary and assume compliance. Cats do this instinctively. A cat doesn't apologize for swatting your hand. A cat doesn't feel bad about walking across your keyboard when you're working. A cat doesn't negotiate about whether it's going to sleep on your bed or not. It just does these things, and through the sheer confidence of its actions, it establishes that its preferences matter more than yours. We call this being difficult. We call this having a bad attitude. But when you see it in a cat, you call it personality. You call it having standards. And the reason is simple. Cats have figured out that confidence in your own preferences is a status signal. If you act like your boundaries matter, people will treat them like they matter. If you act apologetic about your needs, people will treat your needs as negotiable. Now let's talk about the social hierarchy within a multi-cat household, because this is where cat behavior gets really revealing about human status dynamics. In a group of cats, there's almost always a dominant cat. But, and this is important, the dominant cat isn't always the biggest or the strongest. The dominant cat is the one that acts dominant. It's the cat that moves with certainty. It's the cat that takes the best sleeping spots without asking permission. It's the cat that eats first, and every other cat seems to understand and accept this hierarchy without needing constant reinforcement. This is completely different from how, say, dogs establish hierarchy. Dogs need to constantly reassert dominance. They need challenges and confrontations. They need physical tests of strength. Cats establish hierarchy through pure confidence and the consistent enforcement of small boundaries. A dominant cat doesn't need to fight the other cats constantly. It just needs to consistently win the small conflicts. Who gets the sunny spot? Who eats first? Who gets to sit on the human's lap? And here's what's crazy. The other cats just accept it. They don't rebel. They don't demand challenges. They recognize that the dominant cat has established its position through consistency and confidence, and they accommodate themselves to that reality. This is how human hierarchies actually work too, by the way. The people at the top aren't always there because they fought their way up through dramatic confrontations. They're there because they moved through the world with certainty, made decisions confidently, enforced their preferences consistently, and everyone else just kind of accepted that this was the natural order of things. Let's talk about how cats interact with humans, because this is where you really see the high-status behavior. A cat that wants something from you, food, a door opened, attention, doesn't grovel, it doesn't perform, it doesn't try to convince you of its worthiness. It simply makes demands. It meows, it sits on what you're trying to do, it blocks your path, it escalates the inconvenience until you comply. And the remarkable thing is that this works. We don't interpret this as rudeness, we interpret it as the cat knowing what it wants and being willing to take action to get it.
Compare this to how people typically ask for things. We apologize first. We explain why we shouldn't be asking. We indicate that we understand how inconvenient this is. We perform gratitude disproportionately to the actual ask. We're essentially saying, I know I'm low status for needing this, but I'm asking anyway. And then we're surprised when people treat us like we're low status. High-status people ask differently. They state what they need. They assume it will be provided. They don't perform humility about their needs. They don't apologize for having preferences. This isn't arrogance. It's just clarity about the fact that everyone has needs, and pretending yours don't matter doesn't make you noble. It just makes you ineffective. Cats also have this incredible ability to be completely present when they choose and completely absent when they don't. A cat will sit with you, purring, giving you full attention, and then the moment it's done, it's done. It leaves. It doesn't gradually phase out the interaction. It doesn't apologize or make excuses. It was present, and now it's not. And somehow this makes the moments of presence more valuable. Because they're rare and because they're genuine, the cat is choosing to be there, not obligated. This is something high-status people understand. Presence is more powerful when it's voluntary. The moment you need to be somewhere, you become less valuable. You're obligated, not chosen. High-status people manage their time and their attention like it's scarce and valuable because they understand that it is. They're not available to everyone. They don't respond immediately to every request. They make you wait sometimes, and this makes them more desirable. A cat that was available all the time would be a pet. A cat that's available sometimes is a status symbol. Same with people. The person who's always available, who always responds immediately, who's always willing to help, that person is useful. The person who's selective about their time, who makes you wait, who has a full life that doesn't revolve around your needs, that person is high status. Here's another thing about cats. They're not loyal in the way we expect loyalty to work. A cat isn't loyal to you because you fed it when it was a kitten. It's loyal to you because you continue to meet its needs and because it has decided that your home is the best available option. The moment a better option appears, a cat will consider it. This is sometimes interpreted as cats being selfish or untrustworthy, but it's actually just cats being honest about how relationships work. High-status people often operate with this same transactional clarity. They're not loyal to employers that don't pay them well. They're not loyal to friends who consistently drain them. They're not loyal to relationships that don't serve them. This is sometimes seen as cold or calculating, but it's actually just clarity. It's refusing to pretend that relationships are based on anything other than mutual benefit. The moment the benefit disappears, the relationship is over. No guilt, no prolonged decline, just a clean ending and a move to the next thing. Now let's talk about how cats handle conflict, because this is where the high-status behavior becomes almost artistic. A cat doesn't engage in prolonged conflict. A cat doesn't hold grudges. A cat doesn't try to win arguments by being right. If a cat is done with a conflict, it walks away. It leaves the room. It removes itself from the situation. And if it encounters the other cat later, it treats it as a new interaction, completely separate from the previous conflict. This is high-status conflict resolution. You have a disagreement, you establish your position, you disengage. You don't pursue it. You don't need the other person to admit you were right. You don't need them to change their behavior going forward. You just establish that you're not willing to engage in the conflict, and you move on. And somehow this is more powerful than winning the argument would be.
People who operate at high status do this. They don't get drawn into prolonged disputes. They don't need closure from difficult relationships. They don't process every conflict through endless discussion. They state their position, they set their boundary, and they move on. And the people they're in conflict with are left feeling like they lost, even if nothing was actually resolved, because the high-status person's refusal to engage is itself a power move. There's also something interesting about how cats use their appearance. A cat doesn't try to look strong. A cat looks exactly like a cat. But when a cat is threatened, it puffs up, it makes itself bigger, it hisses, it performs confidence and aggression. And it does this not because it's actually bigger or stronger, but because the performance itself is often enough to win the interaction. The opponent backs down because the cat is acting like it's dangerous. High-status people do something similar. They don't walk around trying to prove they're strong or capable. They just move through the world with certainty. But when they're challenged, they escalate. They make it clear that the cost of pressing them further is higher than whatever benefit you might get from winning the interaction. And often, just that signal is enough. The person backing down doesn't do it because they've lost a physical confrontation. They back down because the high-status person is acting like losing this isn't possible, and the other person isn't willing to find out if they're right. Let's talk about something else: how cats handle being wrong. A cat doesn't experience shame the way other animals do. If a cat jumps at something and misses, it doesn't slink away feeling embarrassed. It just tries again or walks away with total indifference. There's no narrative about failure. There's just what happened and what's next. High-status people have a similar relationship with failure and mistakes.
They don't internalize them as reflections of their worth. A mistake is just information. A failure is just a data point. The high-status person learns from it and moves on without the emotional weight that lower-status people carry. This is partly confidence and partly just a different internal narrative. Low-status people treat mistakes as evidence that they're not good enough. High-status people treat mistakes as evidence that they need to adjust their approach. Here's what's really interesting about cats and status. Cats are actually incredibly vulnerable. They're relatively small. They're solitary hunters. They depend entirely on their ability to avoid confrontation. A cat can't win a fight with a dog or a larger predator. A cat's entire survival strategy is based on not getting into situations where it has to win. It hides, it avoids, it uses stealth and intelligence. And yet somehow a cat projects more confidence than almost any other animal. How does this work? How does a creature that's genuinely vulnerable project such high status? The answer is simple. Cats have separated their internal reality from their external presentation. Internally, a cat is terrified of large predators and avoids them at all costs. Externally, a cat walks around like it owns the place. A cat acts like it's not worried about anything, even when it absolutely is. This is one of the most important lessons from cat behavior. High status doesn't mean invulnerable. High status means presenting as if you are. It means maintaining the appearance of confidence and control even when you're uncertain. It means never showing the fear, never showing the doubt, never showing the desperation.
People who operate at high status do this. They don't get drawn into prolonged disputes. They don't need closure from difficult relationships. They don't process every conflict through endless discussion. They state their position, they set their boundary, and they move on. And the people they're in conflict with are left feeling like they lost, even if nothing was actually resolved, because the high-status person's refusal to engage is itself a power move. There's also something interesting about how cats use their appearance. A cat doesn't try to look strong. A cat looks exactly like a cat. But when a cat is threatened, it puffs up, it makes itself bigger, it hisses, it performs confidence and aggression. And it does this not because it's actually bigger or stronger, but because the performance itself is often enough to win the interaction. The opponent backs down because the cat is acting like it's dangerous, but high-status people do something similar. They don't walk around trying to prove they're strong or capable. They just move through the world with certainty. But when they're challenged, they escalate. They make it clear that the cost of pressing them further is higher than whatever benefit you might get from winning the interaction. And often, just that signal is enough. The person backing down doesn't do it because they've lost a physical confrontation. They back down because the high-status person is acting like losing this isn't possible, and the other person isn't willing to find out if they're right. Let's talk about something else: how cats handle being wrong. A cat doesn't experience shame the way other animals do. If a cat jumps at something and misses, it doesn't slink away feeling embarrassed. It just tries again or walks away with total indifference. There's no narrative about failure. There's just what happened and what's next. High-status people have a similar relationship with failure and mistakes. They don't internalize them as reflections of their worth. A mistake is just information. A failure is just a data point. The high-status person learns from it and moves on without the emotional weight that lower-status people carry. This is partly confidence and partly just a different internal narrative. Low-status people treat mistakes as evidence that they're not good enough. High-status people treat mistakes as evidence that they need to adjust their approach.
A cat knows it's vulnerable, but it never lets you see it. It never acts like it needs your protection. It acts like it's perfectly fine on its own, and if you want to be around, that's nice, but not necessary. And this performance is so consistent, so convincing, that we believe it. We treat the cat as high status because the cat treats itself as high status. In human psychology, this is huge. People respond to the presentation, not the reality. If you present as high status, people treat you as high status. And once they start treating you as high status, the reality starts to shift. People give high status people more benefit of the doubt. They forgive mistakes more easily. They attribute success to skill and failure to circumstance. They accommodate the high status person's preferences without being asked. So here's what a cat is actually teaching us about high status behavior. It's not about being better than everyone else. It's not about actually being superior. It's about understanding that status is largely a performance, and that if you perform high status behavior consistently, people will treat you as high status. It's about boundary enforcement. It's about scarcity of attention. It's about refusing to apologize for your needs. It's about moving through the world with certainty, even when you're uncertain. It's about not needing people's approval because you're not seeking it. The remarkable thing is that this works. Cats have figured out a behavioral strategy that gets them exactly what they want: food, shelter, comfort, and the admiration of people much larger and more powerful than they are, by simply refusing to play the game of seeking approval. They act like they don't need anyone, and everyone responds by trying to win their attention. And if you look around human society, you'll notice that the highest status people are operating exactly like this. They're not the ones trying hardest to impress you. They're the ones acting like they don't care whether you're impressed or not. They're not the ones seeking your approval. They're the ones making you seek theirs. They move through the world with the same certainty that a cat does, the same indifference to judgment, the same refusal to apologize for existing. This is what it means to behave like a high-status personality. And cats have been teaching us this for thousands of years. We just keep misinterpreting it as aloofness instead of recognizing it for what it is: a masterclass in how to get what you want by acting like you don't need it.